very interesting to me to fly in southern waters rather than in the north.
For 7 years, Amelia Earhart's disappearance has remained one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, until now. In a shocking turn of events, her lost plane has suddenly reappeared, sending shockwaves through the world of aviation and history.
This is one of Amelia Earhart's planes as she flew back in the 1930s. The plane, of course, she tried to go around the world in has been missing since 1937.
Could this finally unravel the truth behind her fateful final flight? What secrets does the wreckage hold? And how did it remain hidden for nearly a century? Buckle up, because this discovery changes everything. Join us as we dive into the mind-blowing details of this astonishing revelation.
Amelia Earhart was on that famous quest when she vanished in 1937 to become the first woman pilot to circle the globe. Well, tonight here, word of a new discovery, a tiny broken jar, and it could be proof that she might have survived that crash after all. Here's Ron Claiborne.
Breaking barriers and shattering records. Amelia Earhart's rise to aviation fame was not just about breaking records. It was about proving herself in a world that often doubted women's abilities. Her defining moment came in 1928, when she was invited to be the first woman to cross the Atlantic by air. It was a grand opportunity, but there was one catch. She wasn't the pilot. Instead, she was merely a passenger, sitting in the aircraft while Wilmer Stoltz and Lewis Gordon took turns flying. Though the journey catapulted her to international fame, Amelia found little satisfaction in it. She later admitted that she felt like just a sack of potatoes, contributing nothing to the flight itself. The fame was exhilarating, but in her heart, she knew she wanted more. She didn't want to be remembered as a lucky passenger. She wanted to be the one flying the plane. Determined to carve out her own legacy, Amelia set her sights on something far more daring: a solo transatlantic flight. No woman had ever done it before, and even among men, the feat had only been accomplished once, by Charles Lindbergh in 1927. Amelia was determined to follow in his footsteps, not as an imitation, but as proof that women could match men in the skies. On May 20th, 1932, she climbed into her bright red Lockheed Vega 5B, ready to make history. She took off from Newfoundland, Canada, with her eyes set on Paris, just as Lindbergh had done. But the sky had its own plans. The flight was anything but smooth. Howling winds pushed against her plane. Icy fog crept over her wings, and to make things worse, her equipment began to fail. Alone in the cockpit, she had no radio communication and no way to fix the problems mid-air. She had to rely entirely on her instincts, experience, and sheer willpower to keep the plane steady. After nearly 15 grueling hours, Amelia realized she wouldn't make it to Paris. Instead, she spotted a field below in Northern Ireland and made an emergency landing. A puzzled local farmer approached her as she stepped out, exhausted but victorious. "Where am I?" she asked, her first words after the harrowing journey. She might not have landed in Paris, but it didn't matter. She had done something no woman had ever done. She had crossed the Atlantic alone. This time, there was no doubt. Amelia Earhart had earned her place in history. The world erupted in celebration. Newspapers across the globe hailed her as a hero, and she was showered with awards and honors. Among them was the Distinguished Flying Cross, making her the first woman ever to receive the prestigious military decoration. But Amelia had no intention of stopping there. She had tasted the thrill of achievement, and she wanted more. Over the next few years, she continued to push the boundaries of aviation. She became the first woman to fly solo from Hawaii to California, a route even more dangerous than crossing the Atlantic. She was the first woman to fly non-stop across the United States, proving she wasn't just about endurance, but also about speed and precision. She shattered multiple records, flying higher and faster than before, always seeking the next great challenge. Amelia wasn't just a pilot, she was a symbol of courage, determination, and breaking barriers. At a time when women were expected to stay grounded, She took to the skies and refused to come down. Her fearless spirit inspired generations, proving that gender should never be a barrier to ambition. She showed the world that courage and perseverance could defy expectations, shatter ceilings, and make history. Her story wasn't just about flights and records. It was about daring to dream, daring to try, and daring to fly, no matter the odds. She has had the willpower to become so adventurous right from childhood. Let's delve into the details of how she discovered her passion for flying. A childhood of adventure and the call to fly. From the moment Amelia Earhart took her first breath on July 24, 1897, in Atchison, Kansas, she was never the kind of child who could sit still. While most little girls were content with dolls and tea parties, Amelia was out climbing trees, racing through open fields, and building daring contraptions in her backyard. One of her most ambitious childhood projects was a homemade roller coaster, a wild, thrilling ride she had designed herself. When it came crashing down with her in it, leaving her bruised but grinning, she simply dusted herself off, proving early on that adventure was in her blood. Even as a child, Amelia was drawn to stories of fearless women. While other kids collected toys or trinkets, she gathered newspaper clippings of women who had dared to challenge expectations. Female doctors, athletes, and explorers who broke barriers in a world that tried to confine them. She admired their courage, unaware that one day she too would be a name in history books and inspiring generations to come. But Amelia's childhood wasn't all thrills and dreams. Her father, Edwin Earhart, struggled with alcoholism, which cast a shadow over their family's life. The Earharts moved frequently, often uprooting Amelia from the places she had just begun to call home. The instability was unsettling, but nothing could shake her adventurous spirit. She learned to adapt, to find excitement in the unknown, and to dream beyond her circumstances. Then, in December 1920, everything changed. Amelia and her father attended an air show in Long Beach, California, an event that would ignite a passion she never knew she had. Aviation was still a new, dangerous field, mostly dominated by men, and flying was considered reckless at best. Yet, as Amelia watched a small plane soar into the sky, twisting and turning effortlessly, something inside her stirred to life. Seeing the spark in his daughter's eyes, her father paid for a 10-minute ride with a renowned pilot, Frank Hawks. The moment the wheels lifted off the ground, Amelia felt something she had never felt before, a sense of freedom so pure and limitless that she knew in that instant she had found her true calling. Flying was more than an adventure. It was her destiny. From that moment forward, Amelia was unstoppable. She was determined to learn how to fly, even if it meant making sacrifices. To afford flying lessons, she took on odd jobs, working as a photographer, a truck driver, and even a stenographer. Every spare cent went toward her dream, and in 1921, she finally began lessons with Netta Snook, a pioneering female pilot who had already made her mark in aviation. Amelia was a natural. She absorbed every lesson with an unwavering determination, eager to master the skills that would allow her to take full control of the skies. Within just 6 months, she had saved up enough money to buy her first plane, a bright yellow Kinner Airster, which she affectionately named the Canary. To her, it wasn't just a machine. It was a symbol of her freedom, her defiance, and her unwavering ambition. Owning a plane wasn't enough. Amelia wanted to make history. In 1922, she set a new record, becoming the first woman to fly 14,000 feet, higher than any woman had ever gone before. Her incredible feat caught the world's attention. People weren't just amazed at what she had done. They were inspired by what she represented. Amelia wasn't just a pilot. She was proof that women could do anything men could do, even if the world told them otherwise. But she wasn't satisfied with just being a record breaker. She wanted to use her achievements to pave the way for other women, showing them that no dream was too big, no goal too high. Amelia quickly became a public figure. not just because of her accomplishments, but because of what she stood for. In a time when women were expected to stay grounded, both literally and figuratively, she soared. She used her newfound fame to advocate for women in aviation, encouraging young girls to dream beyond the limitations society placed on them. For Amelia, flying was never just about fame or setting records. It was about proving that nothing was impossible. She stepped into a male-dominated world and shattered every expectation, inspiring future generations of women to take to the skies, not just in planes, but in their own ambitions, dreams, and aspirations. And this was only the beginning of her incredible journey. How did she get to achieve that feat? Let's take a look at Amelia Earhart's journey into education and aviation. A trailblazer in education and aviation. Amelia Earhart's journey to becoming one of the most celebrated figures in aviation was shaped by both her education and her relentless determination. Though her name would eventually be etched in history as a pioneering aviator, her early years were filled with academic pursuits, career shifts, and a deep thirst for knowledge, all of which contributed to her success in the skies. Born in Kansas, Earhart's childhood was defined by frequent relocations as her family moved from Iowa to Minnesota and finally to Illinois. It was in Illinois that she completed high school, but the traditional expectations for a young woman of her time did not appeal to her. She was drawn to fields dominated by men, and her curiosity about the world led her to pursue higher education in multiple institutions. During World War I, Earhart's sense of duty led her to leave college and volunteer at a Canadian military hospital. While working with wounded soldiers, she encountered aviators returning from battle, sparking a newfound fascination with flight. Although she had not yet taken to the skies herself, this experience planted the seed of what would become her life's passion. After the war, Earhart enrolled at Columbia University, a prestigious institution where she studied medicine and science, subjects that intrigued her. However, financial difficulties forced her to pause her studies. She later attempted to continue her education at the University of Southern California. But once again, traditional academic paths failed to hold her interest. Everything changed in 1920 when she experienced her first flight. From the moment she soared above the ground, she knew that flying was her true calling. Determined to make her dream a reality, she began taking flying lessons under Knitter Snook, one of the few female pilots of the time. Earhart's academic background gave her a methodical approach to aviation. She understood the science behind flight, studied navigation, and dedicated herself to mastering every aspect of piloting. On her 25th birthday, she purchased a Kinner Airster biplane and soon set the women's altitude record of 14,000 feet. Though her family's financial troubles forced her to sell her plane, she never abandoned her passion. She worked as a social worker in Massachusetts, while still flying in air shows. Her big break came in 1928, when she was selected to be the first woman to cross the Atlantic by plane. This moment made her an instant celebrity, leading to record-breaking flights and cementing her place in history. Amelia Earhart's legacy was not just about flying. It was about persistence, education, and the courage to chase dreams against all odds. Amelia seemed not to be satisfied with her accolades, as she prepares for what eventually became her final flight. Let's delve into the mystery of Amelia's last flight. The final flight and the mystery that shook the world. By 1939, Amelia Earhart had already cemented her place in history. She had shattered barriers, defied skeptics, and proven that the sky was no longer just a man's domain. But for Amelia, there was still one last daring goal: to become the first woman to fly around the world. It would be the longest and most demanding journey of her career, stretching 29,000 miles across continents and vast, unforgiving oceans. Understanding the risks ahead, she chose Fred Noonan, an expert navigator, to accompany her on this perilous expedition. Together, they would attempt what no woman had ever done before. On June the 1st, 1937, Amelia and Fred took off from Miami, the starting point of their ambitious adventure. Their flight path took them south through the Americas, then across the Atlantic Ocean to Africa. They pressed forward, soaring over the deserts of the Middle East, the bustling cities of Asia, and the seemingly endless stretches of the Pacific Ocean. Each stop brought them closer to their goal, but the journey was anything but smooth. They battled unpredictable weather, mechanical challenges, and sheer exhaustion, yet their determination never wavered. By July 2nd, they had reached Lae, New Guinea. Their dream was within reach. Only 1,000 miles remained. But the most dangerous part of their journey was just ahead. Their next destination was Howland Island, a tiny and remote patch of land in the vast Pacific Ocean. Finding it would require absolute precision. The margin for error was razor thin. One miscalculation and they could miss the island completely. As they neared their target, Amelia's radio transmissions grew increasingly urgent. She reported that they were running dangerously low on fuel. Desperately searching for Howland Island, she called for help. Then, suddenly, silence. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan had vanished without a trace. Their disappearance triggered one of the largest search efforts in history. The U.S. Navy and Coast Guard scoured the ocean, deploying ships and aircraft to find any sign of the missing aviators. But despite weeks of searching, not a single piece of evidence surfaced. Had they crashed into the ocean? Had they survived on a deserted island? Or was there something more to their disappearance? The lack of answers only fueled speculation, and over the decades, countless theories emerged. Some believed they had perished at sea. Others claimed they had been captured by the Japanese, and a few even suggested they had changed their identities and lived in secrecy. But none of these theories could ever be proven. For nearly 9 decades, the fate of Amelia Earhart remained one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, until now. In a groundbreaking revelation, her plane has finally been discovered deep in the Pacific Ocean. The wreckage, hidden beneath the waves for generations, could hold the long-awaited answers to what really happened on that fateful day. Where has the plane been all these years? What secrets does it hold? And most importantly, what really happened to Amelia Earhart? Let's dive into Amelia's final journey and disappearance. Amelia Earhart's journey and disappearance. Amelia Earhart was no stranger to breaking barriers. As the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, she had already secured her place in history. But in 1938, she set her sights on an even greater challenge: circumnavigating the globe. This daring expedition would test the limits of aviation, requiring precise navigation, careful planning, and unwavering determination. By her side was Fred Noonan, a highly skilled navigator who specialized in celestial navigation. Together, they piloted their Lockheed Electra, an aircraft built for endurance, across vast continents and treacherous oceans. Their journey took them across Africa, Asia, and Australia before reaching Papua New Guinea. Every stop was an opportunity to fine-tune their strategy, knowing that even the smallest miscalculation could spell disaster. By the time they landed in Papua New Guinea, they had already traveled 22,000 miles. Just 2,000 miles remained, but this final stretch was the most dangerous. The next leg required flying 2,500 miles over the Pacific Ocean to Howland Island, a remote strip of land that was no more than 1.5 miles long. Positioned between Australia and Hawaii, it was intended as a refueling stop before their final push toward California. However, the Pacific was an unforgiving expanse. With no landmarks to guide them, Earhart and Noonan would rely entirely on radio signals and Noonan's precise calculations. On July 2, 1937, they took off from Lae, Papua New Guinea, heading east over the Pacific. At first, the flight appeared routine, but as they approached Howland Island, everything began to unravel. Thick clouds made it difficult for Noonan to take accurate celestial readings. Radio transmissions became unreliable, cutting off vital communication with the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca, which was stationed near Howland to guide them in. Despite these difficulties, Earhart continued to send messages, her voice growing increasingly tense. She reported that they were running low on fuel and struggling to locate the island. The crew aboard Itasca responded, sending strong radio signals to help guide her, but she seemed unable to hear them. Desperate, they sent up massive smoke signals, hoping Earhart would spot them and adjust course. But there was no indication she ever saw them. At 8:43 a.m., Earhart sent her final confirmed transmission, saying they believed they were near Howland but could not see it. And then, silence. The moment Itasca realized that Earhart's radio had gone dead, an intensive search operation was launched. The Coast Guard and U.S. Navy scoured thousands of miles of ocean, deploying battleships, aircraft carriers, and reconnaissance planes in one of the largest rescue efforts in history. Every possible landing or crash site was investigated, but the Pacific yielded no wreckage, no distress signals, and no survivors. After weeks of searching, the inevitable conclusion was reached. On July 19, 1937, Amelia Earhart was officially declared lost at sea. Her disappearance remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Over the decades, countless theories have emerged. Some believe she crashed into the ocean and sank, her aircraft lying at the bottom of the Pacific, undiscovered. Others suggest she and Noonan survived the crash, landing on a remote island, only to perish without rescue. Despite advances in technology and new expeditions, no definitive trace of Earhart, Noonan, or their plane has ever been found. Yet, her legacy remains unshaken. Amelia Earhart was more than just a pilot. She was a fearless pioneer, an adventurer, and a symbol of boundless ambition. Though she vanished, her story continues to captivate and inspire, proving that the human spirit is meant to push boundaries, defy limits, and chase the impossible. Amelia's mysterious disappearance wasn't just rejected by many, even after several search efforts. Instead, it paved the way for several theories. Let's take a close look at the details of the theories, as well as search efforts targeted at locating Amelia's missing aircraft. Theories and search efforts. Even after Amelia Earhart's disappearance, the world refused to believe that her story had truly ended. With no wreckage, no remains, and no definitive answers, speculation ran wild. As years passed, theories emerged, each offering a different explanation for what really happened to Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, when they vanished over the Pacific Ocean on July 2, 1937. The simplest and most widely accepted theory suggested that Earhart and Noonan ran out of fuel, crashed into the ocean, and sank beyond recovery. However, the complete lack of debris puzzled experts. Could a Lockheed Electra, a relatively large aircraft, truly vanish without a trace? The absence of physical evidence raised more questions than answers, leading to alternate theories that captivated the world. One of the most compelling possibilities was the Nikumaroro theory, which suggested that Earhart and Noonan crash-landed on Nikumaroro, a remote and uninhabited coral atoll 350 miles south of Howland Island. Years later, investigators found skeletal remains of a woman of European descent, along with a woman's shoe, a sextant box, similar to the one Noonan used, and aircraft fragments. These discoveries ignited fierce debate. But with the bones mysteriously disappearing in the 1940s, modern forensic testing was impossible. Without irrefutable proof, the Nikumaroro theory remained just that, a theory. Another idea pointed to a far darker possibility. Some believed that Earhart and Noonan were captured by the Japanese, possibly after accidentally flying into restricted airspace near the Marshall Islands or Saipan, which were under Japanese control. Local islanders later reported that they had seen an American woman and man in distress around the time of Earhart's disappearance. Some even claimed that Earhart was mistaken for a spy by, interrogated, and either imprisoned or executed. This theory was further fueled by old photographs, wartime intelligence files, and reports that the U.S. government may have deliberately concealed the truth. A variation of this idea suggested that Earhart's flight was actually a secret mission for the U.S. government. Some claimed that she was spying on Japanese military operations and, after being caught, the U.S. orchestrated a cover-up to prevent an international crisis. Others speculated that Earhart survived but was forced into hiding under an alias, spending the rest of her life in the U.S. or Japan under a different name. One particularly bizarre claim suggested that she lived out her life in New Jersey as a woman named Irene Bolam. Though this was debunked when Bolam strongly denied the accusations and even took legal action to clear her name. As if these theories weren't intriguing enough, mysterious radio distress calls deepened the mystery. In the days following Earhart's disappearance, amateur radio operators worldwide reported receiving faint and desperate transmissions believed to be from Earhart's aircraft. Some claimed to hear her pleading for help, suggesting she had survived on a remote island, transmitting distress signals until the plane's batteries died. But despite extensive efforts to trace these signals, they eventually faded into silence, leaving behind even more uncertainty. The hunt for Amelia Earhart became one of the most expensive and exhaustive searches in history. In the immediate aftermath of her disappearance, the U.S. government spent millions combing the Pacific for any sign of her plane. Over the decades, modern expeditions employed sonar scans, deep-sea submarines, and satellite imaging in hopes of finally locating the wreckage of her Lockheed Electra. Yet, despite countless books, documentaries, and independent investigations, the search remained fruitless. Then, in 2024, a breakthrough changed everything. Reports surfaced of a new discovery deep in the Pacific Ocean, where wreckage matching Earhart's aircraft dimensions had been identified in an area previously overlooked. Using advanced scanning technology and AI-based mapping, investigators found stunning new evidence that could finally solve the greatest aviation mystery in history. For nearly 9 decades, the world had only theories, unanswered questions, and speculation. But with each passing year, the search for truth continued. If the recent discoveries hold, the world may finally be on the verge of bringing Amelia Earhart's story to its long-awaited conclusion. Let's find out what the discovery is all about. The discovery of Amelia Earhart's plane. For nearly 9 decades, the disappearance of Amelia Earhart remained one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in aviation history. Since that fateful day in 1907 when her plane vanished over the Pacific Ocean, speculation ran wild. Some believed she had crashed into the sea, lost forever in the vast expanse of water. Others theorized she had landed on a remote island and lived out her final days as a castaway. Expeditions searched tirelessly, but the answers remained elusive. Until now. On July 20th, 2024, researchers finally solved the mystery. A team of deep-sea explorers led by Robert Ballard, the same expert who had discovered the wreck of the Titanic, confirmed the location of Earhart's Lockheed Model 10 Electra at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean near Nikumaroro. Using state-of-the-art sonar technology, underwater drones, and high-resolution imaging, their team conducted an extensive scan of the ocean floor, hoping to find evidence of the long-lost aircraft. At approximately 2,000 feet below the surface, they made an extraordinary discovery. Scattered across the seabed lay a debris field that matched the specifications of Earhart's plane. Among the wreckage were fragments of the fuselage, engine components, and other pieces of the aircraft's structure, some of which bore markings consistent with the Lockheed Electra she had piloted on her final journey. The sight of these long-buried remains sent a wave of excitement through the team. It was a moment that changed history. Marine archaeologists and forensic experts carefully documented every piece of the wreckage. The discovery was only the first step. Experts from the National Transportation Safety Board, Lockheed Martin, and leading aviation historians were called in to verify the authenticity of the remains. Each fragment underwent thorough analysis, and after meticulous examination, they reached an undeniable conclusion. This was indeed the aircraft that had vanished in 1937, bringing an end to one of aviation's most enduring mysteries. The location of the wreckage reinforced the theory that Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, had made an emergency landing near Nikumaroro. Rather than crashing directly into the ocean, it appeared they had managed to bring the plane down on the island's reef. This possibility had been widely debated for years, as various pieces of circumstantial evidence, radio signals, distress calls, and even human remains had suggested that the duo had survived for some time after the crash. For decades, researchers speculated that Earhart and Noonan had lived as castaways, struggling against the harsh conditions of the isolated island. The newly discovered wreckage supported this idea, giving credibility to the belief that they had fought to survive before eventually succumbing to dehydration, starvation, or exposure. The notion that Earhart's final days may have been spent trying to endure in an unforgiving environment added a poignant dimension to her story. While the mystery of her disappearance has now been solved, Amelia Earhart's legacy remains as powerful as ever. She was more than just a pilot. She was a fearless trailblazer who defied the odds. In 1932, she became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, a feat that made her a global icon. At a time when aviation was still in its early days and women were often discouraged from entering the field, Earhart shattered expectations and inspired countless young girls to dream beyond the limitations imposed upon them. Her accomplishments were not just about personal glory. She believed in breaking barriers, advocating for women's rights, and pushing the limits of what was thought possible. Her determination and resilience were evident in everything she did. And her famous words, "The most difficult thing is the decision to act, the rest is merely tenacity," continue to inspire generations. The discovery of her plane marks a turning point in aviation history. It provides long-awaited closure to those who have spent their lives searching for answers. The wreckage resting on the ocean floor serves as a testament to her bravery, her ambition, and her relentless pursuit of exploration. Though her final journey has now been traced, her influence endures. Even after all these years, Earhart's story continues to ignite a sense of adventure in those who dare to dream. The woman who once soared through the skies, challenging conventions and defying expectations, remains a symbol of perseverance and courage. While the world now knows where her journey ended, her spirit lives on in the countless individuals she has inspired. Amelia Earhart's final chapter has been written, but her story is far from over. What do you think about the discovery of the mysterious 87-year-old missing plane? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.